the second part of your assignment for this week is to start a drawing of one of the flowers that I've sent you via email. That's part of the assignment sheet. You can either use one of those flowers as a source for subject for next week's assignment, which will be to render the flower or whatever subject you choose in colored pencil. So I want to quickly review how we go about drawing this subject. As you will recall from the first two classes, we learned how to sketch out our subject using a very basic shape, first of all, either a cone or cylinder, circle or cup. So in this case, I'm going to draw this pansy, and basically this pansy is a sphere or a round shape. So I'm going to start on my tracing paper, which is where you should always start working, by drawing kind of a round shape. I'm going to just sketch it in very quickly. It's not just round here. This basic area here is round, but then we've got a little something going on here, so it's like a half round. And once you get to this point, then you can start breaking this down into shapes. Like this is sort of a roundish triangle, so we're going to put that down in here. Roundish triangle. And then you've got these other ellipses that make up the rest of the pansy. Now this is your very basic shape for this subject. Now you have to go in and start to draw in a few more details. And what you want to do here is take this tracing and place it under another sheet of tracing paper, or if it's small enough, you can just fold your sheet up and start working on a clean area of the tracing. So if you look at this, photograph very carefully, you'll see there's all kinds of very subtle changes in the edges of this flower. So you want to start putting these details into your drawing so that the flower really looks the way it does in the photograph. So what we're going to do is we're going to start up here in the center, and it looks like there are two edges here on the top of this particular petal, and then it comes down, and my sketch may not be totally right, so I'm going to try and change that a little bit in order to more closely follow the shape that I see in the photograph. Now I'm going to rely on you not to trace this, because you don't really learn anything by tracing it, but to draw it as carefully as you can and pay attention to all the details. So here now, I have this petal drawn. I can draw in these shapes, and don't just sketch them in like this. You have to look at them and say, all right, what is this shape? And how much room does it take? And then there's another shape here, and how much room does it take? And where do these pieces end? Do they go up towards the center? You want to draw them as you see them. Don't just sketch them in, because it's not realistic. It's a design rather than a real representation of the flower. So these will all get put in at some point, and then you can work on this other section of petal and look at the contours. As you can see, these contours are very exact, so you want to capture those little tiny changes in the edges. It will make a big difference in your drawing. So you're going to come around here and you're going to really look at this and see what it does and draw it as you see it. So you're going to do this for every single one of these petals. At this point, I'm just about finished putting in the final line detail for this pansy. And it would appear that there's probably a stem here somewhere, so we can add a little of that. Then I'm going to take this, and now that I have a nice fine line drawing, as you can see once I pull this off of here, okay, again we mark this front so we know which side of this flower is correct, and we're ready to go. So what's the next thing we do? We trace and transfer. So we're going to turn this over after we've marked it front. Then we're going to turn it around. And with our HD pencil that we've sharpened, we're going to go over our line very carefully so we don't change the appearance of the flower. And trace over this entire drawing. All right, so we're almost finished tracing over the drawing that's on the front side. And we're going to flip it back over, and we're ready to transfer this onto good paper. And what we will do next is tape it down so that it doesn't move while you are transferring. Now I recommend that you only tape the top edge of the drawing so that you can lift it up as you are working, and you can tell whether or not you've transferred the entire drawing. Now that we are ready to transfer, again make sure that your 2H pencil is sharp and start to go over your lines again so that they will transfer onto your drawing paper. I like to start at the top. Do not press hard. It's not necessary, because if you have used your HB or your 2B pencil to do the transfer line underneath, you don't have to press hard because that graphite is very soft and it will transfer very easily onto the drawing paper. At this point, we're almost finished with the transfer. So let's see if we caught everything. So you can lift, because you've taped this down, now you can lift this up and you can see what you're missing. So I see I'm missing something in here. So I can go back and be assured that my paper hasn't shifted and add those extra lines in order to have a complete drawing. I didn't put in these little patterns that are on the flower, as you can see from here. I didn't put these in because I'm just going to add these when I do the color rendering of this flower for next week. And I forgot to put a little stem in here, so I'm going to add that stem. And I generally leave this taped to the drawing in case I erased something and I need to redo it. But at this point, I have a transfer. These transfers are very soft. The pencil is very soft. And what happens is that when you use your colored pencil, it's going to mix with the graphite if the graphite is soft. And then then it'll make the color of the colored pencil a little dirty and muddy. So we want to go over this again carefully anyway, because we want to really refine our details, working with the hardest pencil we have, and in this case it's the 2H, and redraw very carefully with a light, sharp pencil, go over our subject and add any details that we may have missed in the first process or in the transfer. Okay, so I, at this point, have finished going over my transfer with a fine pencil. And now I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and the best way to do this is by making a little cylinder, getting your kneaded eraser kind of warm, and then make a little roll out of it so that it's nice and smooth. And then you can roll over your whole drawing and pick up all of the graphite from the transfer. And you'll see now how much lighter and cleaner the drawing is. And it looks like I missed a spot here. Let's see, I can still see it. Okay. And pick up all of the graphite. And it really should be quite light. Don't rub too hard. You don't want to pick up the good pencil line at this point. But you want it to be very, very light, so you just barely see what's there. We don't want to see these pencil lines once we start working with the colored pencil. We want the colored pencil to define all the edges as nice color edges. And that is what you will need for next week. Now, if you don't get it done for next week, that's okay. You'll have this video that you'll be able to look at, and you can do this at your own pace and time. So that's it. We will talk to you next week.